Chapter 298 A Fake Martial Soul True Body. When Xiao blocked her opponent's blade light with the three-live soul crush cauldron, her opponent was only 10 meters away. Suddenly, her left hand grabbed the cauldron, and she stepped forward with her left leg. She cried out in a girly voice, and her entire body made one rotation with the tip of her left foot as the axis. She lifted the 1.5-meter wide and tall cauldron, charged it with a ghastly gale of wind, and threw it in Qin Yue's direction. So violent. Even Huo Yuao could not help but open his eyes wide in shock. Since when did Xiao, who was normally so gentle, become so violent? Qin Yue cried out as she stepped forward with her left leg. She sliced forward with the knife in her hand as she slashed at the three-live soul crush cauldron with her blade. For the first time, the body of her blade came into direct contact with the cauldron. Clang. This time, an ear-shattering sound like a bell being struck could be heard. The cauldron's trajectory was interrupted by the huge knife, and suddenly, it started to drop vertically. Qin Yue was sent back 3 steps by the impact. At this moment, Xiao had already rushed up. She pursued her falling three-live soul crush cauldron as she pushed forward with her hands. A layer of black light rose around her body as the cauldron continued its trajectory to smash into Qin Yue. The distance was too close, and the cauldron was too big and heavy. It was impossible to even dodge it. Qin Yue could only place her knife horizontally before her as she tried to forcefully block the three-live soul crush cauldron. There was a bang as the blade of the knife bent slightly, and Qin Yue's entire body was sent flying backwards. However, she was no weakling. After she was sent flying back through the air, she lifted the knife high above her head. Her third soul ring started to shine, and as she swung her hands upward, she was already grabbing onto the bottommost portion of the knife. She chopped down with it forcefully. Instantly, a blade light about 10 meters long descended from the sky relentlessly towards Xiao. It brimmed with a reinvigorated aura that seemed capable of slicing the arena in two. Xiao instantly felt as if there were nowhere for her to hide. The area around her appeared to have been tightly sealed off, but she remained fearless. Her second soul ring started to shine, and she lifted the three-live soul crush cauldron up into the air, blocking the area above her head. The already humongous cauldron grew even bigger, and soon, it was 3 meters wide. A powerful black light shone around it once more and enveloped Xiao. Clang. Another deafening sound. Xiao's body bent over slightly, and one could see that half of the green blade light had disappeared in the black light. The rest was blocked by the three-live soul crush cauldron and disintegrated. Following that, Xiao chucked the three-live soul crush cauldron in her hands out once more. It went after Qin Yue, who had just landed unevenly on the ground. Xiao's attacks were indeed forceful. In the Tang Sect's waiting zone, Huo Yuao could not help but laugh. Xiao is such an ace. Ever since he had returned from his exchange program, he had yet to fight her despite having trained with her many times. As a person, Xiao was not flashy or flamboyant. Huo Yuao had not known that Xiao, whose style was mainly defense and control, had such a violent battling style. From her battling style, did she not resemble an assault-type soul master? She was indeed a pupil of Elder Sun. A sharp glint flashed in Qin Yue's eyes. Xiao was putting a lot of pressure on her, giving her no respite. She barely managed to stabilize herself before the three-live soul crush cauldron came at her again. She stabbed the huge knife into the ground, penetrating it. Qin Yue's entire body started to shine with a green glow. With that, one could hear a series of metallic noises, and her entire body was quickly covered by a suit of armor. It was a completely green full suit of armor, and was looked extremely heavy and thick. Qin Yue's body became extremely sturdy, like a goddess of war. As the armor appeared, the three-live soul crush cauldron was already in front of her. Qin Yue used her right hand to push her knife outward. She had no intention of dodging, but instead attempted to face it head on. Boom. The three-live soul crush cauldron was sent flying back. Qin Yue pulled out her huge knife, and a light flashed behind her back. She leapt into the sky, and came slashing down at Xiao with her weapon. Such power. Xiao was startled. The increase in her opponent's power evidently came from her suit of armor. This should be her close combat soul tool. It was a wonderful combination. With the power of the armor, she increased the power of her blade. Compared to her first two teammates, Qin Yue's abilities were in no way weaker. The three-live soul crush cauldron returned to its original position. Xiao lifted it up with her hands, and once more, it acted as a shield above her head. Despite a deafening clang of impact, she was unable to make Qin Yue retreat. Instead, she sank down into the metallic floor of the arena. Now that she had the upper hand, Qin Yue showed no mercy. She sliced repeatedly and frantically down at Xiao, as if she had gone crazy. With each strike, an intense blade light shone. While Xiao was able to block her offense with the three-live soul crush cauldron, she was still forced into a retreat. Qin Yue's armor not only increased her strength, but also increased her soul power. As a close combat soul master, she did not need to increase the power of her weapon, and hence, her soul tool was this armor. While Xiao was sent into a retreat, her fighting capabilities were slowly being revealed. When she realized that she could not match her opponent in strength, she decided to change her strategy. She started to spin the cauldron in her hand and activated her ghost shadow perplexing track. She stopped trying to fight her opponent head on, but instead tried to stabilize her position by fighting defensively. By activating her martial soul in the soul armor, her opponent was definitely going to be more drained than her. This was the thought going through Xiao's mind. Furthermore, she was a twin-souled soul master. While her soul power was not as good as Wang Dong's, she was one of the top few soul masters with 5 soul rings. Hence, she was in no rush, and behaved even more calmly than Wang Dong had. Shu Sanchi, who was watching the match, muttered to himself, "Why does Xiao resemble a defense-type soul master more than me?" The first 2 rounds had ended rather quickly. The third round ended in a defeat for the Clear Sect, as its captain had attacked prematurely. The current match was the most intense. The two sides clashed with unparalleled ferocity and intensity, exciting everyone in the crowd. Clang. Another blow from the blade was deflected by the three-live soul crush cauldron. A sense of futility surfaced in Qin Yue's mind. She suddenly felt that the cauldron before her was akin to an insurmountable mountain. Even with all her strength, she could not do much to it. It was not a good feeling. Oh no, my soul power is being depleted too quickly. Amidst the helplessness, Qin Yue suddenly understood that this was because she lacked the energy to continue her offense. Xiao had been waiting for this moment all this while. However, she did not try to beat Qin Yue back quickly. Instead, she hoped to train herself up and at the same time, conceal her true abilities. Xiao instantly felt Qin Yue's sudden loss in energy. Immediately after Yue clashed with her three-live soul crush cauldron once more, Xiao took a step forward. She held onto one side of the cauldron with both arms. Then, she pushed forward with one arm and pulled with the other. She was using a secret technique of the Tang Sect, controlling crane capturing dragon. Instantly, the three-live soul crush cauldron started to spin. Qin Yue spun along with it as her blade was pulled to one side. Xiao cried out, and then her hands went down, and the three-live soul crush cauldron started to expand once more. Its first soul ring started to shine, and the huge cauldron dropped to the ground. With a huge boom, a vast amount of black gas started to spread outward. Defenseless, Qin Yue was sent flying back from this cloud of black gas. She was, after all, a soul engineer, and even a close combat soul engineer was still no soul master. In terms of soul skills, there was still some distance between her and a real soul master, as she relied more on her soul tools. After such a long fight, Xiao had yet to use any soul skill. Even Qin Yue had forgotten that she was fighting a soul master, not a close combat soul engineer like herself. The sudden soul skill hit Qin Yue when she least expected it. Thanks to it, her body was sent flying into the air. She could feel a hum in her armor, and she suddenly felt nauseous from this blow. In her heart, she knew that something was amiss, but it was too late. Xiao pushed forward with both hands, sending the three-live soul crush cauldron flying forward. Her second soul ring started to shine. Cauldron sweep. The opportunity was only present for an instant, but Xiao made full use of it. Qin Yue had nowhere to run, and was sent flying by this powerful move. In midair, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Xiao leapt into the air. She grabbed the shrinking cauldron, and her body spun and sent the cauldron flying out. It sliced through the air with a terrifying sound as it made its way toward her opponent. I admit defeat. Qin Yue cried out in midair. A huge figure appeared in midair and blocked the three live soul crush cauldron with one palm. When he looked at the cauldron, which was still spinning against his palm, Zhang Zan could not help but sigh in admiration at the Tang Sect's strength. The Cleade Sect was not weak, and they even had some unique abilities. However, they had been forced into a tight corner by the Tang Sect. No wonder they were able to beat the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. If this went on, this team would be one of the favorites for the championship title. A black light flashed, and the three live soul crush cauldron disappeared. On his other side, Qin Yue fell to the ground, leaning on her knife. While her protective soul tool was able to absorb most of the impact from that blow, her innards were still shaking from the shock. Qin Yue knew that if she tried to go on, she could still wear Xiaoxiao down. However, if she did that, she would be unable to participate in the group round later on. It was the 5th round of the individual round, which also meant that her side had already lost 4 rounds. The only way to victory was in the group round. Furthermore, this was contingent on at least 2 victories in the individual round. She had to keep up her fighting abilities, so she conceded defeat. The Tang Sect wins. At this moment, in the individual elimination round, the Tang Sect had 4 points, while their opponent only had 1. The Cleade Sect only had 3 members left. Wang Donga, who was sitting next to Hua Yuao, asked quietly, Yuao, shall we give them a chance for the group round? Hua Yuao looked her in the eye, smiled, and said, of course we have to give them a chance. If not, how will their team captain be satisfied? Wang Donga understood what he meant as she replied, I understand. Hua Yuao smiled and squeezed her hand. The others of Shrek's 7 monsters smiled slightly. Only Nana didn't know. What does she mean by I understand? Jiang Nanan whispered in a low voice next to her. Clear all obstacles for the glory of Shrek. Now Nana understood. Her heart was filled with a sense of profound respect. They wanted to clear all obstacles for the team from Shrek Academy. The Cleade Sect was powerful enough to threaten Shrek Academy. They were trying to weaken it as much as possible. The Tang Sect could choose to advance or retreat. They had many options to choose from. However, this was not the case for the Cleade Sect. Their captain, who had been sitting firmly in her seat, suddenly stood up. She stared coldly at Xiaoxiao and then at the youth next to her. The youth stood up too. In a low voice, he conversed with the captain of the Cleade Sect and then he stood up and went on stage. Tang Sect, Xiaoxiao, Cleade Sect, Shui Bing. Let the round begin. With the unbreakable Douluo's announcement, the youth from the Cleade Sect known as Shui Bing shot forward like an arrow. At the same time, 2 yellow, 3 purple, and 1 black soul ring rose around his body. Soul Emperor. Was he actually a 6-ring Soul Emperor? When they noticed their opponent's Soul Emperor level cultivation, some in the Tang Sect frowned. If Shui Bing was a Soul Emperor, and if their captain was a Soul Emperor, this meant that their team had 2 Soul Emperors. In the last tournament, other than Shrek Academy and the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, there was no other team with this combination. They had never expected to meet such a team in the pre-trials of the tournament. This meant that while the Cleade Sect was not as powerful as the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, they were not too far off. Xiaoxiao looked at her 6-ringed opponent, but remained fearless. She maintained her previous tempo as she approached him. As Shui Bing rushed toward her, an emerald green light started to shine from metallic green rings on his body. In total, there were 6 metal rings. These 6 metal rings gave off a warm light. As the distance between Shui Bing and Xiaoxiao closed, his body started to undergo a sudden change. Layers of green scales started to appear from underneath his skin. When he first released his martial soul, he was able to use his soul power to suppress the change in it, so it only revealed itself now. Not only that, but his also body started to elongate, and as his body arched in midair, it extended by more than 10 meters. The 6 soul rings that surrounded his bucket-thick python-like body started to spin too. His first and third soul rings started to shine. His body surged forward as he came smashing down onto Xiaoxiao. What kind of martial soul is this? Xiaoxiao looked stunned. This was evidently not a typical martial soul, and her opponent was not yet a soul sage. Naturally, he would not be able to reveal his martial soul true body. However, in his current shape, was this not like a martial soul true body? How could this be possible? While she was shocked, Xiaoxiao's movements did not slow. She retreated quickly, and her 3 live soul crush cauldron appeared. It suddenly enlarged as it came crashing down from the sky. Shui Bing had no intention of dodging it. Instead, he used his huge python-like body and clashed head-on with the 3 live soul crush cauldron. What happened next shocked Xiaoxiao greatly. After her immense cauldron smashed into Shui Bing, it was actually sent flying away. Shui Bing's body continued to descend onto Xiaoxiao. He opened his mouth to reveal rows of fangs as he tried to swallow her whole. That's right, this is the power of a martial soul true body. As she came from Shrek Academy, Xiaoxiao's knowledge was wide. From the force of the crash just now, she was able to ascertain her suspicions. If it were not a martial soul true body, how could he knock her 3 live soul crush cauldron so far away? Could her opponent be a 7-ring soul sage instead of a soul emperor? How could this be possible? A 20-year-old 7-ring soul sage. In the entire history of the Douluo continent, this had never happened before. While Xiaoxiao was shocked, her body did not freeze. The 3 live soul crush cauldron, which had disappeared after it was sent flying away, reappeared next to her. Xiaoxiao's gaze turned serious, and she stretched her hands apart. Instantly, the 3 live soul crush cauldron split into 3. She was protected in the center by the 3 copies of the cauldron. At the same time, her 4th soul ring started to shine. Each of the 3 cauldrons started to shine with an intense black light. 3 rays of black light shot into the sky. They met in midair, and then crashed down onto the body of the huge python. Seal. Xiaoxiao made an odd gesture with her hands. Her body started to float upward from the center of the 3 cauldrons, and shine with dazzling runes. Her 1,000-year 4th soul skill gave off an unparalleled aura of power. The body of the huge python that descended from the sky was too enormous, so there was no way of dodging it. The moment the green light from its body touched the 3 live soul crush cauldron's black light, it disappeared. Following that, an odd scene appeared. Shui Bing's huge body started to shrink quickly as it fell from the sky. The 3 cauldrons started to move away from each other as they formed the shape of an equilateral triangle. Xiaoxiao stood near one of the cauldrons. Her hands made an odd heart-like shape. When Shui Bing's body landed, it was only a third of its previous size. It was still in the shape of a huge snake, but it seemed to have been bound with black light, and was twisting about intensely. Cauldron seal. This was Xiaoxiao's 4th soul skill, a very powerful control-type soul skill. Xiaoxiao's 3 live soul crush cauldron was an ancient martial soul that had been passed down for many generations. In the past, a cauldron was an important symbol of the state. This skill was akin to cauldron quake, which Xiaoxiao could activate by combining her 1st and 2nd soul skills. Xiaoxiao's 4th soul skill came from a mystical soul beast. When the soul ring of this soul beast fused with her, an anomaly occurred. This soul beast was an oddity from the past, known as the Zizi. It was a powerful soul beast that brimmed with a severe aura that could suppress evil. However, as pure Zizes had long been extinct, this soul beast only had some Zizi blood in it. The 1,000-year soul beast Xiaoxiao had killed had looked more like a goat. However, the Zizi blood in this goat-like soul beast was fully brought out in its fusion with the 3 live soul crush cauldron, and an anomaly happened. This 1,000-year soul skill now had an extremely powerful sealing ability, able to suppress auras and seal all beings. Once a being was sealed, 2 outcomes would arise. First, it would be sealed for 3 seconds. During this time, Xiaoxiao could not attack it, as she had to control the soul skill. However, in those 3 seconds, the opponent's soul power would be suppressed by the 3 live soul crush cauldron, and at least 30% of it would be eroded away. No matter how much more powerful the opponent was, as long as it was not 2 levels more powerful than Xiaoxiao, the cauldron seal would work. The other situation arose when the opponent was unable to break free from cauldron seal. The result then would be even more terrifying. After it had been suppressed by cauldron seal, it would be sealed within the 3 live soul crush cauldron, and only released upon Xiaoxiao's command. Of course, the cauldron could only imprison one being at a time. If it wanted to imprison another, it had to release the first one. In other words, this 4th soul skill was Xiaoxiao's killer move. As she faced off against a more powerful opponent, she finally decided to use it. Shui Bing's martial soul was not a huge python, but instead another primordial lord of the jungle, an anaconda. Anacondas normally lived in the depths of jungles and swamps. As it was naturally powerful and could devour even lions and tigers, anyone that got trapped by one would be doomed. Shui Bing was indeed a 6-ring soul emperor. The reason why he could reveal his martial soul true body was because of the 6 metal rings that had appeared on his body. They were 6 class 5 soul tools, but they belonged to a set. Together, they were powerful enough to activate the hidden strength of the soul master's martial soul and give rise to an increase in soul power. Shui Bing, who was originally a soul emperor, could use the metallic rings to activate his martial soul true body. How could he not delight in it? He had immediately abandoned his original close combat soul tool and and decided to cultivate this set of metallic rings wholeheartedly. By using it in this tournament, he hoped to achieve an earth-shattering success. Who knew that he would have the foul luck of meeting Xiao's cauldron seal? Xiao's cultivation could not compare to Shui Bing's, and hence, he was only trapped by cauldron seal for 3 seconds. However, in these 3 seconds, one could clearly see that the power of the anaconda had been severely weakened. This was the 3 live soul crush cauldron's trademark ability to weaken its target's soul power. With much difficulty, Shui Bing was able to escape from cauldron seal. However, as he struggled, he felt a sense of disorientation. This was an inherent result of the suppressive power of the 3 live soul crush cauldron. Xiao knew that her cultivation was not as good as her opponent's. At this moment, there was no use holding back. The third, second, and first soul rings on her body all started to shine. The first to activate was the third soul ring. The split 3 live soul crush cauldrons suddenly grew massively, to the point where their diameters exceeded 3 meters. Following that, the first soul ring kicked into effect. The 3 cauldrons were simultaneously lifted 30 centimeters off the ground, and then they came crashing down simultaneously. As a huge tolling sound rang out, 3 black halos of light started to spread, fusing at the center of the 3 cauldrons. Right where Shu Bing, in the shape of an anaconda, was located. Shu Bing, who had just regained control of his body, froze as the intense tremor hit him. Following that, he saw 3 cauldrons, almost as big as 3 small mountains, coming straight toward him from 3 different directions. The first soul skill of the 3 live soul crush cauldron was Cauldron Quake, the second one was Cauldron Sweep, and the third one was Cauldron Smite. After the 4th soul skill, Cauldron Seal, was activated, these 3 soul skills were used almost back-to-back by Xiao. Her control of her soul skills was godly. With Cauldron Smite, the 3 live soul crush cauldrons attacked. Even as a soul emperor, Shui Bing spat out a mouthful of blood after he was hit by the 3 cauldrons. Evidently, he was rather severely injured. At this moment, he saw Xiao make a face at him as she said, "I admit defeat." With that, she turned and ran off. "I won." Even if it was a victory, he felt a profound sense of injustice. When Shui Bing returned to his human form, his face was so dark that it was no different than if he had lost. However, the unbreakable Douluo was already in front of him, and he couldn't do anything even if he wanted to. He remembered the example of his teammate earlier on. Xiao jumped down from the arena and said, "Yuao, I didn't finish my task." Yuao chuckled and said, "No, you have done it very well." As he said that, he looked at the arena once more, and then said in a loud, clear voice, "Referee, we decide to forego the individual elimination round and hope we can progress straight into the group round. Could you kindly allow it?" Forego the individual round? This is the perfect chance to score points. Are they afraid of Shui Bing, who can use his martial soul true body? Many observers thought this way too, as they would never have imagined that they would be able to witness such power in a group of soul masters and soul engineers below the age of 20. This was unbelievable. Zhang Zan nodded and said, "The Tang Sect forgoes the individual round. In the individual elimination round, the Tang Sect earns 4 points while the Clear Jade Sect earns 7 points. Both sides are permitted 1 minute of rest to prepare for the group round. Those in the crowd who did not understand thought that the Tang Sect feared their opponent's martial soul true body. However, those who were more discerning realized that Yuao had made an excellent decision. With Shui Bing's power, he could possibly win 1 or 2 rounds, but was the Tang Sect weaker than the Clear Jade Sect? Shu Sanqi had yet to fight, and he had also demonstrated the cultivation of a 6-ring soul emperor. Despite Xiao conceding defeat in the previous round, was it really defeat? She managed to massively drain Shui Bing's power, and if they moved straight into the group round like this, it would be impossible for Shui Bing to recover all his power. Furthermore, only 6 members of the Clear Jade Sect could participate. Among them, Yu Chen and Qin Yue had lost, and they were both drained. Under these circumstances, the Tang Sect would have a comparative advantage in the group round. 5 of their team members had yet to take part, and were all fresh. Points-wise, it was only a consolation for the weaker team. For a team that could dominate completely in this competition, it was nothing. When Yuao said that he wanted to abandon the individual round and move straight into the group round, it was clear that he no longer cared about these points. Coupled with the fact that they had already beaten the team from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, they would be able to enter the top 8 as long as they could beat the Clear Jade Sect. 1 minute was not a lot of time. Soon, the members of both teams went onto the arena. They looked at each other, and the atmosphere instantly turned severe. The captain of the Clear Jade Sect finally appeared. This was the first time she had appeared since she took part in the tournament. She still donned her mysterious black robes and covered her face. However, an icy cold aura was being emitted from her body in the direction of Wang Donga. Taking into account that Adler was her brother, this enmity was set in stone. Yuao poked fun at Wang Donga next to him and said, "It appears that your charisma doesn't always work for you. Look, this female captain doesn't seem to like you that much." Wang Donga nodded and said, "That is because I have yet to use the 36 tricks I have up my sleeves. If not, who knows what may happen. After all, I didn't kill her brother. He drank my blood to replenish himself and then blew up." Yuao chuckled. He too was curious. Why does Wang Donga's blood have such power? In other words, if Adler dared to drink her blood, he should be able to break it down. So why did he die from it? The unbreakable Douluo stood at the center and beckoned both teams forward. As they approached each other, the Tang Sect could clearly sense the chilling aura of the captain of the Clear Jade Sect. Zhang Zan said in a heavy tone, "The competition is about to start. Both of you have many people on your teams and hence, I can't afford to look after every single one of you. Once again, let me remind you that this is only a competition. You only live once, so please cherish your own lives, as well as the lives of your opponents." As he said that, he turned to look at the captain of the Clear Jade Sect and said, "It's regretful that your brother died. At the same time, I wish to apologize to you for failing to protect him. However, he was not killed by Wang Donga. I think you know better than me why he exploded." The captain of the Clear Jade Sect did not respond. She continued to give Wang Donga her death stare. "Can the participants from both sides please state your names, starting from the Clear Jade Sect?" Clear Jade Sect, Qin Yue. Clear Jade Sect, Yu Chen. Clear Jade Sect, Chen Jun. Clear Jade Sect, Qing Qing. Vice captain of the Clear Jade Sect, Shui Bing. Shui Bing's face was pale as he stared at Xiao. He knew the taste of being hit consecutively by 4 of Xiao's soul skills. The Clear Jade Sect captain was the last to open her mouth. In her raspy, icy cold and feminine voice, she said, "Clear Jade Sect, Kane. What an odd name." Among the 2 other members of the Clear Jade Sect who had yet to take part, Chen Jun was a tall youth and Qing was a plain-looking girl with a nice body. Tang Sect, Yuao. Tang Sect, Wang Dong. Tang Sect, Shu Sanqi. Tang Sect, Hikeitu. Tang Sect, Jiang Nanan. Tang Sect, Xiao. Tang Sect, Nana. The 7 members of the Tang Sect reported their names. Before the match even began, the tension between the 2 sides appeared capable of igniting the very air. For the Tang Sect, this was one of the strongest teams they had met since they took part in this Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. To them, this was a test, especially for Yuao as their captain. Both teams stepped back. The 2 teams slowly moved back. Wang Donga continued pushing Yuao's wheelchair, and hence spoke to no one as she walked slowly away. They could clearly sense that Yuao's spiritual detection was joining all of them into a singular entity, like a huge net that enveloped the entire arena. In the mind of every member of the Tang Sect, they all had a bird's eye view of the entire arena. When they approached their respective corners of the arena, the 2 sides started to line up. On the Clear Jade Sect side, Qin Yue, who had battled against Xiao, stood at the forefront. On Qin Yue's left was Chen Jun, and on her right was Qing Qing. Behind her stood the powerful Shui Bing. Kane stepped behind Shui Bing, and Yu Chen stood behind Kane. Evidently, he was ready to attack with his astounding speed. On the Tang Sect side, Shu Sanqi, who always played a defensive role, stood at the front. To his left stood Xiao, and to his right stood Jiang Nanan. Behind Shu Sanqi was Hikeitu, and behind Hikeitu was Wang Donga and Yuao. Nana stood all the way at the back. The 2 formations both sides took up were not conventional, but they were well coordinated. Zhang Zan, the unbreakable Douluo, looked at both sides. Even with his cultivation, he felt a sense of pressure in his heart. After all, no one knew what the result of this competition would be. These youngsters were not only exceptionally strong, but devious as well. He could not manage the entire arena by himself. After all, 5-ringed and 6-ringed soul masters were already considered the creme de la creme. He forced these thoughts out of his mind and looked at both teams. He raised his left hand and cried out, "Begin." as he chopped down. With this, both teams started to move immediately. While the Clear Jade Sect only had 6 people, they were undoubtedly going on the offensive. Qin Yue, who stood at the front, was now supported by her teammates. Her entire body brimmed with strength as she unleashed her broadsword martial soul. She advanced rapidly, and almost instantly her entire body was covered with a thick layer of armor. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.